No, I don't want this company looking through my stuff. That's weird.
Adobe finally got caught. They are now paying $150 million. And I think you know why. The Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice filed a joint lawsuit against Adobe, accusing it of deliberately hiding fees, deliberately making subscriptions hard to cancel, and deliberately trapping millions of customers inside plans they never fully understood they had agreed to. Adobe's own employees had compared their early termination fee to heroin, not because it was harmful, because of how effectively it kept customers from leaving. But here's what makes this story bigger than a lawsuit. Adobe is not a struggling company. It is not cutting corners to survive. In the same year, it was sued for trapping its own customers. It reported $21.5 billion in revenue, record-breaking profits. By almost every financial measure, Adobe was thriving. And yet, their stock sat at an 8-year low. Their biggest acquisition attempt ended with them handing $1 billion directly to their own competitor. And a new wave of AI tools is quietly threatening to make Photoshop, the product that built this entire empire, feel optional for the first time in 30 years. More money than ever, more problems than ever. This is the story of how Adobe built the most powerful creative software empire in history, charged people to escape it, and may now be facing something it cannot charge its way out of.
I have severed all ties with Adobe. I've ended an almost 40-year relationship.
Because Adobe is a pathetic company. Adobe wants to steal your work. Adobe wants to use it to train their AI data, and then Adobe wants to sell that AI data to make lots and lots of money.
It almost feels like the entire world of corporate America and big tech is trying to speedrun its way into absolutely pissing off its entire customer base.
The story of Adobe starts in a garage in Los Altos, California, December 1982. Two men named John Warnock and Charles Geschke had just walked away from one of the most prestigious research labs in the world, Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center. The place that invented the computer mouse, the graphical user interface, the Ethernet, genuinely world-changing stuff. But Xerox had a problem. It was great at inventing things, terrible at doing anything with them.
You want Xerox to consider something called a mouse?
Warnock and Geschke had spent years building a piece of software at PARC called Interpress. It could describe exactly how text and images should appear on a printed page. Precise, flexible, the kind of thing that could change an entire industry.
It's not just words, it's not just drawings, it's not just pictures. It's the combination of all of those that makes communication more effective on the printed page, and now on displays and television screens as well.
We want to recreate that electronic form of paper. In other words, we want the electronic analog to paper.
They went to Xerox management and said, let's bring this to market. Xerox said it would take 7 years, so they left, rebuilt the whole thing from scratch, called it PostScript, and started looking for customers. The first one they found was Steve Jobs. Jobs was building the Apple LaserWriter at the time, a printer that could produce professional-looking documents from a home computer. He needed exactly what they had built. He liked it so much that he tried to buy the entire company for $5 million. They said no. Instead, they sold him a 19% stake and a 5-year license to use PostScript. That one deal made Adobe profitable in its very first year, something almost no Silicon Valley startup had ever done. PostScript quietly started a revolution. Suddenly, ordinary people could print things that looked like they came from a professional print shop. The publishing industry changed overnight, and Adobe was right at the center of it. What happened over the next 20 years was something the software industry had never really seen before. Adobe built a monopoly that people actually loved. In 1987, they released Illustrator, a design tool for creating graphics that could be scaled to any size without losing quality. Designers adopted it almost immediately. 3 years later came Photoshop. Originally built by two brothers, Thomas and John Knoll, Adobe licensed it and turned it into the most used image editing software in history. Think about that for a second. Photoshop became a verb. You don't say, I edited this photo. You say, I photoshopped it. That happens to maybe 5 products in the entire history of technology. Then in 1993, Adobe gave the world the PDF, a simple idea, a file that looks exactly the same on every device, every screen, every printer in the world. It sounds obvious now. At the time, it was genuinely revolutionary. The PDF is still one of the most used file formats on Earth. Product after product followed. Premiere for video editing, After Effects for motion graphics, InDesign for print layouts, Audition for audio. Each one became the industry standard in its category. Each one pulled in a whole new wave of professionals who built their careers around Adobe tools. In 2005, Adobe spent $3.4 billion to buy Macromedia. That deal brought in Flash, which powered most of the interactive web at the time, and Dreamweaver, the most popular web design tool. By the mid-2000s, Adobe had built something that genuinely had no comparison comparison in software history. A complete creative ecosystem, photography, video, audio, illustration, web design, print, all connected, all industry standard, all Adobe. If you worked in a creative field anywhere on earth, you almost certainly used their tools. They had not just won the market, they had become the market. In 2013, Adobe made a decision that changed everything. They stopped selling software. For 30 years, if you wanted Photoshop, you bought Photoshop. You paid once, you owned it. You used it for years until you chose to upgrade. Creative Suite 6, the last version sold that way, cost around $2,600 for the full package. Expensive, but it was yours. Then Adobe looked at what subscription companies were doing to their revenue and decided to flip the whole model overnight.
We just decided that we had unique opportunity to reinvent creative. What we wanted to do was provide access to the entire suite of Adobe software at a really affordable price to a much broader set of customers.
From May 2013, there was no more buying anything, no more Creative Suite, just Adobe Creative Cloud. Pay monthly or annually. Stop paying and the software stops working. The reaction from designers and photographers was immediate and loud.
Enough. Adobe, you've crossed the line. You kept intruding and insisting and being inconsiderate. I'm done with you. You're out.
Forums filled up with anger. Petitions got tens of thousands of signatures. People who had used Adobe tools for their entire careers suddenly felt like the ground had shifted under them. The tools they had built their livelihoods on were no longer something they owned. They were renting them, every month, forever, with no way out. Adobe said the new model was better, more affordable upfront, always the latest version, better for everyone. Financially, they were right. Revenue went from $4.4 billion to over $21 billion. Instead of waiting years between upgrades, they now collected money every single month from millions of people. Predictable, scalable, extremely profitable. But something else was happening that the revenue numbers did not show. Once you had spent years inside Adobe, building up files, learning shortcuts, developing workflows, using formats that only Adobe software fully supported, leaving became genuinely painful. Not because the product was so great, because the cost of leaving was so high. Adobe understood this completely, and they built their pricing around it. Here is exactly how the trap worked. Adobe offered 3 ways to subscribe: month to month, annual, paid up front, and the one they pushed the hardest, annual plan, billed monthly. That third option sounded like the best of both worlds. The lower price of an annual plan, the flexibility of paying month by month. Cancel whenever you want, except you could not cancel whenever you wanted. Buried in the fine print, not on the main pricing page, not in the headline, buried deep in the sign-up flow in language most people skipped, was a clause. Cancel in the first year, and you owe 50% of whatever payments are left. Sign up in January, cancel in July, and Adobe immediately charges you for half the remaining year. For many plans, that meant hundreds of dollars appearing on your card the moment you clicked cancel. Most people had no idea this existed until they tried to leave, and trying to leave was its own nightmare. The cancel button was not easy to find. When people found it, the process involved multiple steps. Many reported being transferred between support agents, being offered discounts to stay, being told their cancellation had gone through, and then finding they were still being charged the next month. The complaints had been building for years before anyone in power noticed. Reddit threads, viral tweets, customer service horror stories that got shared tens of thousands of times. Adobe consistently appeared in lists of the most hated subscription services among American consumers. Then in June 2024, the US government finally stepped in. The FTC and the DOJ filed a joint complaint against Adobe and 2 of its senior executives personally, not just the company, the people who ran the business. The charges were clear. Adobe had hidden the early termination fee, made cancellation deliberately difficult, used what the government called dark patterns, interface design choices specifically intended to confuse people and stop them from leaving. The internal documents that came out during the case were the most damning part. Adobe employees had internally compared the early termination fee to heroin, not because it harmed people, because of how effectively it kept them from escaping. Adobe denied everything publicly, said the terms were always clear, said the cancellation process was simple. In March 2026, they settled $75 million to the government, $75 million in free services to affected customers, $150 million total, plus a formal agreement to change how they present subscription terms to new customers going forward. For a company making $21 billion a year, $150 million is nothing. A rounding error on the balance sheet. But what it meant for how people felt about Adobe was a different story entirely. While all of this was happening, Adobe was quietly trying to make the biggest bet in its history. In September 2022, they announced they were buying Figma for $20 billion. If you work in design or tech, you already know what Figma is. If you don't, it was the tool that an entire generation of designers had switched to without Adobe ever really noticing. Browser-based, no download required. Multiple people could work on the same file at the same time from different computers. Clean, fast, modern. It had become the standard tool for product designers at Google, Microsoft, Airbnb, Spotify, Netflix, and basically every other major technology company on Earth. Adobe had watched this happen, had seen younger designers build entire careers without ever opening a single Adobe product, and decided the only solution was to buy Figma before it got any bigger. $20 billion, 50 times Figma's annual revenue at the time, an enormous number by any measure. But the logic was simple. Buy the future before the future replaces you. Regulators in Europe and the UK saw it differently. They looked at the deal and concluded that Adobe buying its most threatening competitor would be bad for the market and bad for customers. The deal would give Adobe too much control over design software, with no real competition left to keep them honest. In December 2023, the deal was called off, and because of the terms they had agreed to up front, Adobe had to pay Figma a breakup fee, $1 billion, handed directly to the competitor they had been trying to absorb. Adobe walked away from the deal with nothing. No Figma, no future they had been trying to buy, just a $1 billion bill. Then in July 2025, Figma went public. On the first day of trading, its shares jumped 275%. Its market value hit nearly $68 billion.
And when you talk about the financials, these might be some of the best financials we've seen this year.
I think it's fair to say this was a successful IPO. Yeah.
The company Adobe had tried to buy for $20 billion was now worth more than 3 times that number. Adobe had spent $1 billion in 2 years watching the threat they had tried to neutralize become 3 times more dangerous. But here is the thing. The lawsuit and the Figma disaster are not even the biggest problem Adobe is facing. The biggest problem cannot be settled in court or fixed with an acquisition. Artificial intelligence is changing what creative work actually requires. For 40 years, Adobe's entire business was built on one simple truth. Making professional quality images, videos, and graphics was hard. It required skill, it took time, and it required expensive software that took years to learn. Adobe provided the expensive software. The difficulty of learning it meant that once you did, you stayed. You had invested too much time to walk away. You were locked in by your own expertise just as much as by any cancellation fee. AI is now quietly dismantling that logic. Adobe's own tool, Firefly, can generate images and edit photos from a simple text description. That sounds impressive until you realize what it actually means. Tasks that once took a skilled designer hours inside Photoshop can now be done in seconds, by anyone, with no training, with or without an Adobe subscription. And it is not just Adobe's own AI doing this. Canva, which serious designers used to dismiss as a tool for making flyers, now has 200 million users and releases new AI features constantly. Tools like Midjourney are producing imagery that would have been impossible without Adobe 2 or 3 years ago. New AI native editing apps are launching every few months and attracting designers who see no reason to pay $60 a month for software they only half use. The switching costs Adobe built its business around are weakening, not because the cancellation fees got smaller, but because the new tools are different enough that your old Adobe skills and files do not even transfer. People are not upgrading away from Adobe. They are building completely new workflows that never touch it. Adobe's stock hit an 8-year low in 2025. While revenue was at a record high, the market was saying something clearly. The money is fine right now. The future is the question. So how did a company this dominant end up here? It was not one mistake. It was 3 separate decisions that have all landed at the same time. The first was turning a product into a prison. The subscription model itself was not wrong. Lots of great software companies run on subscriptions and their customers are happy. The problem was how Adobe executed it. Hidden fees, cancellation nightmares, internal documents comparing their own retention tactics to hard drugs. They took a business model that could have built long-term loyalty and used it to build a trap instead. The people who needed Adobe the most became the people who resented it the most. The second was spending 2 years and $1 billion trying to buy the future rather than build it. Acquiring Figma was not a crazy idea. Figma was a real threat and Adobe had the money to remove it. But regulators said no. And instead of spending those 2 years building something that could compete with Figma, Adobe spent them trying to acquire it. The result was a competitor that was now independent, $1 billion richer, and 3 times more valuable. The third was not taking AI seriously enough soon enough. Adobe's entire advantage rested on complexity. The more complex the tools, the more valuable the people who mastered them, the more dependent those people were on Adobe. AI has been flattening that complexity for years. And while Adobe has its own AI tools now, the question is whether those tools make Adobe more necessary or quietly make it less necessary over time. Today, Adobe is still the biggest creative software software company on earth. Photoshop is still the standard. Premiere is still used to edit major films and television. The PDF is still the most shared document format in history. 40 million people pay for Creative Cloud every month. The revenue numbers are strong. Nothing is collapsing here, but something real has changed. The feeling that Adobe was simply unavoidable, that if you worked in a creative field, you had no choice but to be an Adobe customer. That feeling is fading, slowly, quietly, but it is fading. Designers who started their careers 5 years ago have options that did not exist before. Students learning creative skills today are learning on tools that Adobe did not build. Companies that once bought Creative Cloud without thinking are starting to ask whether they still need all of it. Adobe can still turn this around. They have the money, the talent, and the brand. What they need is something harder to build than software. They need people to choose them, not feel trapped by them. For 40 years, that distinction did not matter. It is starting to matter now, because the generation of creatives coming up next did not grow up needing Adobe, and nobody has figured out how to write a cancellation fee for that.